All right, and good morning to another Business to Business webinar. We had Christina Aguilera there with Candyman, and it's a great way to start the morning this morning because we just got news that the JobKeeper will be extended now. This is I've just got this officially through. JobKeeper 2.0 has been announced. So after the 27th of September, we continued in the current form till the 27th of September, and then the scheme will continue with some modifications till March 2021. So JobKeeper 2.0 with a two-tier payment system. So for employees who average in February more than 20 hours a week will get $1,200 a fortnight, and those who average less than 20 hours per week in February will get $750 a fortnight. Businesses will need to go through another eligibility criteria. But this is good news, and this has just come in now. So that's some really good stuff. We knew that it was going to be extended. We just wasn't sure. We weren't sure when. But now we have that confirmation that that has come through. Welcome to all those that are joining us. This is another in the series of business to business webinars that we have been running, all based on the book that you can see behind me there, the business to business collaboration of chapters. I'll move that way, there we go. Compiled by Jackie Thompson, written by either committee members or past committee members of the Chamber of Commerce and a couple of guests. So it's been a good book, and that we are now into this is the 12th in the series. And this morning I'm joined by Amanda Lowry. Now Amanda is a brand specialist. She spends all of her time looking at brands and what they do to your business. And a brand isn't just an icon or a color, but I'm going to let Amanda tell us all about that. Amanda, are you there?
I am. Morning, everyone.
There you are. Good morning.
How are we doing?
Excellent, excellent. So now I've turned on slide sharing. Did you have some slides you wanted to share with us this morning?
I do. So let's attempt to share those. There we are.
All right, and over to you.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that looks
Wonderful.
great.
Okay, great. So thanks for having me on. It's always a great opportunity to talk about branding, and hopefully we can add some value to you this morning. So of course this presentation is going to be focused around the three types of brands. But I first wanted to just touch on what Stuart was mentioning is really understanding what a brand actually is. You know, a lot of us refer to a brand as our logo, but I believe that's just because we can't actually articulate exactly what a brand is. The logo is there to help give us that tangible, that entity that we can associate it with. So at the crux of it, a brand is really the promise that we make the world, or the promise that we make to the market. And it's really important as a business owner that we understand what promise we're putting out there, because it's all about that expectation that we set. So if someone was to interact with us, what's their expectation coming into our shopfront, our website, a meeting? What's that expectation, and ensuring that we're delivering on that each and every time. It's very easy for us at the starting point when it's just us in business, but when we start to grow a team and expand and get more shop fronts, it's important that we can clearly articulate what that expectation is to everyone that is a part of the business, because they're really our biggest brand ambassadors, your employees. And then once we have that expectation, it's really the feeling that they get. I'm sure we've all had that experience where we've gone with someone, we couldn't really articulate why it was that we went with them. They just felt right. They felt like the right person or the right business, or the right brand to go and work with. So with that said, let's move into our first brand, which is the personal brand. This is the one that I am finding is becoming so much more popular simply because of the kind of society and the culture that we're building moving forward. You know, a lot of that contributes to social media channels, the ability to have such a strong presence online, and to, you know, be in the living rooms of every single person globally. If you are a personal brand, or if you're looking to establish your own personal brand, there's a few things to keep in mind. First off, you need to be able to be cool with being front and center. You know, people want to know the person. This is why personal brands can be such a strong approach. It's you. They want to know what you do, what your life's about, both personally and in business. This is where, you know, the business and personal lifestyles kind of merge a little bit. You know, it's being comfortable with letting people in, seeing who you really are. You know, being authentic, the word authentic's being tossed around a bit too much these days, but really sort of dropping the guard and letting people in and being yourself. The service and the products that you provide are secondary to that. People want to be able to connect. The second point is that personal connection. So being that one-on-one person with them. It's, you know, we live in a world, especially with social media, it's so disconnected, and I'm finding that people are really craving that personal connection, which is why I think personal brands are so strong in their nature. And it's all about the story. So, you know, being a little bit vulnerable, sharing your story, that past story, maybe it's your future ambitions, your future mission, you want to change something in the world. You've had some past experiences which have influenced where you are today, and, you know, product or service that you're introducing. So this is really what a personal brand is built off of. I find a lot of personal brands start from just starting to do something, and then they build over time. They're not actually intended to be a personal brand, but they become. Great examples of these are over on the right there with, you know, Michael Jordan, one of my favorites. You've got Gary Vee, Oprah, Melissa Griffith. You know, they're all really great examples, personal brands. And, you know, they kind of speak for themselves and how strong of a presence they have. But it's all about them. If you haven't seen the Jordan documentary on Netflix, I highly recommend that you do that. Even though it doesn't specifically talk about the Jordan brand, you can really understand the story and the ambition and the mission that he had behind what he did. And that's what really crafted the personal brand that he had today with the help of Nike. The second brand that I want to touch on is probably, for the majority of you, the one that you currently have. It's the Practical brand. It's probably the most common brand type that we work with. You know, it's really all about those common products and services. You'll see on the side, you've got McDonald's, furniture, food, a thing. You know, it's all those sort of practical services and products. If you do have a brand, the biggest thing to really understand is how you are positioned within your industry and the market, because this is such a saturated brand type. You really need to understand who you're trying to target, find some kind of focus within that group. You're not going to be all to everyone. So it still is important to be positioned well and understand who you are. So even though it is a brand, you still need to have a belief system behind you, your value set, you know, what the vision is, that mission for what you're trying to achieve, and bring that to the forefront. Because even though what you're selling, that service, even though it might be very comparable to the person next door, it's that belief system, it's those values, it's the mission that you're trying to achieve, which is what is going to separate you from those others. And I've got an example slide which I'll show you. The second point that I want to make here is practical brands need to be predictable. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's what builds that trust. It's expectation. If we go back to that promise, it's that expectation that we make with our market. I'm sure us have been to McDonald's, but, you know, my partner and I traveled to Norway last year, and we found ourselves gravitating towards McDonald's and other branded food outlets because we were familiar with them, because we knew as soon as we walked through those doors, we knew exactly what we were getting. We were comfortable with the environment. We were familiar. And that's what, of course, has enabled McDonald's to create such a successful brand globally, because they've been predictable. They've got the same menu each and every time, know what you're getting. I think, if you've seen the movie, it's down to 2 pickles on that sort of thing. It doesn't mean that we can't delight our market. It's that we have this base benchmark of our brand. So when people interact with us, they know exactly what they're getting. That predictability goes right way through from, your identity, of course, but also the kind of customer service that you provide, the experience people have on your website, how you deliver your product, or all of those sorts of things need to align and be consistent and deliver on that. And that's ultimately how you're going to build that trust and that loyalty over time. The third point with a practical brand that I really want to drive home on is the value. We always need to ensure we're adding value, but understanding what type of value we're adding. It's not always about the dollar value. We're consistently telling our clients, we need to stop fighting on price. It's not about you putting on a sale or reducing your bottom line just to get a new client or, some new products out there. It's really identify what your unique value is. That once again comes back to those values and those missions that you set at the very beginning. And what's that value that you can offer to that, and that you can, of course, be predictable on and deliver time and time again. And of course, trying to get something that is only that you can offer, and that will help you to position and create a really strong positioning as you go along. So the example that I want to share with you, we all know furniture brands. So these are 2 practical brands, but very, very differently on the scale. If we look at them, they're both furniture. They both sell furniture. They both sell homewares. They both have retail stores, and they both have a strong online presence. Now, the differences between them, however, is all in their positioning. So even though they sell essentially the thing, they're both furniture stores, Fantastic Furniture is really driven about affordable value, about knowing that you can afford anything in the store and it will look great in your home. It's kind of got that positioning about it. However, Pottery Barn, on the other hand, they focus more on about that experience, that more arcade feeling. That's where they probably teeter on like a brand name kind of retail store, which we'll talk about shortly, but they really focus on the experience. If you were to go inside a Fantastic Furniture store, they've kind of got more of a warehousey feel. Things are sort of stacked on top of each other. They have stock in the back corners. However, if you go into a Pottery Barn, it's really setting a mood and a tone. It smells great. They have scents going. It's just got a very different feel to it because they understand the type of market that they're targeting wants that experience. Fantastic. They want something that's going to look great in their home but not put a hole in their pocket. So this is a great example of, yes, we can have a practical brand, but it's important to understand how it's positioned within it, so we can then be very clear to who we're targeting and then deliver on all of those other elements of our brand. And the third final brand type is, of course, the prestige brand. Not the most common out of the 3, but I'm sure we can all relate to one or the other. The biggest thing to keep in mind if you are looking to set up a prestige brand is you need to be comfortable with being niche. These definitely block out a market. They're very focused in who they target. A lot of the time it is base, pricing people out, but that is essentially what makes them that prestige brand. It's making something that's exclusive, that if someone was to invest, it's not just buying, it's investing into that brand. They're going to get something that's going to make them feel exclusive, make them feel successful along the way. Prestige brands are also fantastic for, really making like they belong to something. It goes beyond just, trusting a brand, it's they belong, it's that sort of tribe culture. These are the types of brands where people will put the logo on the back of their car. If you look at Harley Davidson, there, you know, that's, I think, the only motorbike logo that gets tattooed onto people. Not of they like the logo and it looks cool. It's because of what that represents. And these brands are fantastic for knowing exactly and what they represent. So, you know, a lot of the time for the consumer, it's an extension of themselves. That's why they'll wear a pair of Nike sneakers. You can go any pair of shoes, but Nike, you know, if you buy their shoes, you're more successful, or more like you can do it. You can be just like your idols. You know, I think Nike are a great example of they knew who they were. They knew they were going to be more in the prestige. They were going to be a brand name. So they've done really well in sponsoring all of those top athletes, those athletes that the generations look up to. They admire them, so they want to be like them. You know, going back to the Michael Jordan personal brand that they've helped to fill out and establish. The third part, if you're looking to establish a prestige brand, is the experience. It's all about that experience. For your women out there, if you've purchased a Chanel handbag or one of those sort of prestige brands, it's all about that unboxing. It's the experience of going into store, having that personal one-on-one experience, buying it, going home, take the lid off the box, the tissue paper. It's quite a process, but it's an experience, and they know that they're paying for experience, but they want it. So it's understanding what the market wants, because they're not buying a car, they're not buying a handbag, they're buying the brand. They're buying that feeling that they get when they have that logo, you know, associated to those products and items, because it's an extension of themselves. So if they're in the community and someone sees them, they're going to assume something of them because of the brand that they are wearing, or the handbag that they're holding, or the car that they are driving. You know, I'm always thinking about cars. I mean, at the end of the day, cars are there to get you from A to B. So it's really amazing how, you know, brands have really shifted that playing field, I believe, in the car market. So I'll give you an example of, this is more of a prestige brand versus a practical brand. I think Suzuki are more in the sort of the practical brand spectrum. They're more mass market. They've actually got a lot more products. If you were to compare them to Harley Davidson, in, you know, that they create cars as well. But these guys both sell motorbikes. They both have showrooms. They both have online presences. They both have strong brands within their market, but yet on the they're completely different. You know, Harley Davidson, it's a culture. It's a belonging. You know, people tattoo themselves with their logo because they want to belong to something that is bigger than themselves. Suzuki is more about that sort of A to B, and, you know, looking at that practical value, those features. Someone who would buy a Suzuki would be more about, you know, I want heated seats, and I want, you know, all those, I want metallic paint, I want all of those. It's more of a logical purchase than Harley Davidson is, I just want a Harley Davidson. Kind of, I want to belong to something that is bigger than me. And then finally, I wanted to finish with, because we're currently in a pandemic and we're looking like we're going to go through a second wave, I want to extend on how, you know, how brands can really help you to survive those downfalls in the market. You know, when we can be very, very clear, when we can be consistent and true to ourselves, and live by our promise every time and as we go, brands can prevail through these downfalls. A great example that I experienced myself is with Yui. I think have really established a great brand, especially in that insurance market. They've made it a bit special. They've made it a bit funky in such a mundane industry. So I think they've done very well there. But what they do exceptionally well is the make to their market. If you've seen a Yui ad, you will know that it's always about, we care about how much you drive your car, how much you use your vehicle, where it's stored, and we will charge you what that works out to be. That has always been their promise. It's always been about person, the consumer, taking care of them. We're all individuals. They care about that. So, you know, when this pandemic hit, they were so quick to respond to it. And I'm a Yui customer, and I got an email and they said, you know, we know that you're probably using your car a lot less. You're probably working from home because we're in lockdown. So we wanted to offer you for the next 6 months, I believe it was. Now, this was unexpected. Yui would be a practical brand. It was unexpected, but it was a delight. But at the same time, it was that sort of predictability. It was, oh, well, of course that makes sense. Yes, I'm not using my car as much. That's what you're about. That's why I joined you. So it sort of gave me this sense of, oh, they are thinking of me. I'm not just a number. And I mean, Yui didn't have to do that. And I think that's the thing to remember here is no insurer had to do that through these times. It's costing them, and it'll cost them a lot, but the reward and the loyalty that they will gain over that is, I mean, you just can't measure that. And I thought it was a really fantastic initiative of them, but it was just true to their promise. They weren't doing anything special. There was no bells and whistles. It was just, this is what we believe. This is the current climate that we're in. Here's how we're going to assist in that. And it was that consistency, but it also gave me as a customer that sort of sense of delight and that special feeling from them. Now, I've mentioned that story to other people, to other Yui users, and they're sort of like, yeah, how great was that? You know, I'm going to be loyal to them for life now because I know if anything happens, I'm going to be looked at. So this is where I think, you know, I believe if we're very clear, we're consistently delivering on our promise, even when, you know, the world turns on its head, or if there's curveballs thrown at us, we kind of know how to pivot it. We kind of know how to move in the directions, and, you know, stay ahead of it, stay on top of it. And still keep our brand very much alive. You know, I know the hospitality industry has taken a massive, massive hit. There was a story that I heard where there was, I think, a pizza place, and they had these really hot ovens. So part of their belief system was, you know, helping the community, feeding the community, and they worked that they could make face masks with the type of equipment that they held in their premise. So even though they couldn't trade, they were very quickly able to pivot and still deliver on their promise, but just in a very different way. Another example was there was a photographer that I read a story about. I don't know if anyone else read this story. She was all about sharing family moments, capturing those moments. So even though she physically couldn't book clients in, she decided to roam the streets and take photographs of families on their front porches. So she was still capturing those family moments, but just putting this sort of spin on it. Did they pay for those sessions? No. But the PR and the camaraderie that she gained out of that would be huge. I mean, she was getting articles getting published everywhere. But those families, it was a really special thing for them. It was a really positive, delightful feeling that they got, and that stayed with them forever. So, you know, but that was just still part of her promise. She wasn't having to think of something outside of the box. It didn't have to be that. She just knew what she was. She knew what she did very well, and she was very quick to then respond to that. So I hope that helps. So, and I'll leave it there.
All right. I've got a couple of questions, Amanda. The very first brand that you spoke about, the brand promise, there's some really cool stuff that I was just talking to a school yesterday about that personal brand and your brand promise. Just talking about that, you know, it doesn't come down to logos or that's the one. It doesn't come down to logos or anything like that, does it? When you're building your personal brand, what is that? What would you say you build your personal brand on?
It's your belief system, I think. I think I'll probably talk about Michael Jordan because he's, come with everyone, is he didn't know he was building a personal brand when he was building one. He just had such a strong belief system. He trained extremely hard. He knew what he wanted to be. He didn't base his decisions on what other people wanted him to do or what other people thought he should be doing. He just did him, and people admired him for that. And because he did it so consistently and he was delivering on it time and time and time again, this sort of personal brand essence became. And there's that saying, I want to be like Mike. It's, what does being like Mike mean? Well, it means that you train extremely hard, you dedicate yourself to craft, you don't back down, you get up every time. And that's kind of what I was saying before is, we put logos to that because we don't know how else to describe that unless, you're probably someone like me where you analyze it on a daily basis. So this is why when we do our brands, we always refer first to the logo, only because humans need something tangible to associate to that thing, that essence, that vibe that someone has. And that's why I think a lot of personal brands are just organically grown and they're organically formed because these people just are them. I mean, I think Gary Vee's a great example of that. He just does what he does and people believe what he believes. And that's why they gravitate towards it. He didn't have to try and become anything that wasn't did.
Yeah, and I think that was what I was sort of trying to get through to the kids, was that idea that the first person to believe in the personal brand is yourself, because that gives 100%. You have to understand it yourself. If you actually understand what your personal brand is, what you stand for, what your values are, what you will say yes to, what you'll say no to, what do you want the world to see, then it's easy to then live through that. But whereas logo is something that's sort of created, I guess, externally, and you build a corporate culture that Robert and Gutierrez and a few others have spoken about in this series. Your personal brand is really is your personal values, and you can have a personal brand inside an organization. So Don May, CEO of Domino's, he has a personal brand. He has a personal brand that the world sees, but he also has a brand inside the organization. Would that be right? Would you see that in smaller organizations as well?
Very much. And often I see, people start out just doing what to do. So they've organically built a personal brand and then they've gone, okay, I want to make something bigger of this. So then they make an organization. So they sort of put that company structure around something, but they still very much have their personal brand, and that's inside of that culture. It influences that corporate brand, if you will. So they do very much work side by side. Just because you've got a practical brand doesn't mean you can't have a personal brand either. I think they work very well together because people want to work with people. People want to do business with people. So if you can really communicate very clearly what you're about and what that belief system is, that's essentially what the personal brand is there to do. If people are struggling to work on their personal brand, I think stop trying to create a brand as such and just work out what you want to be. And like you said before, what you will say no to, what you will say yes to, and what those really just drive home on what your values are.
Yeah. And that's some really good stuff. And so for building your company brand, if you were trying to build a company brand, what would be the first thing that you would recommend that businesses look at?
So it's really just getting down to what are they trying to achieve from the business that they're setting out to do. So what's that overall vision? What are they fighting for? What was the whole purpose of creating this business? Was it to stop world hunger? Was it to simply provide a better way of doing a service? That's something that we see a lot of the time. We've got a client where she's got these kits. She hasn't invented these kits. They're just brought in from overseas, from manufacturer, but she's built a brand around it because she didn't like the stigma that was associated with these particular kits. So that's where she's built a brand, associated it to a product to get people more comfortable because she believes how amazing it is. She understood the purpose of why she was building a brand. So she's been very successful in communicating that and then developing all of those brand attributes that go along with it. So of course, your identity, but also how her employees interact as well, how they service, how they package all of their products, all those sorts of things. So
and
once
also
you really get clear on,
I guess down to that, or also that, like even down to that, like little bits and pieces, like the customer service, like what does your invoice look like? Is the invoice delivered out on the day after, or is it 2 weeks and people are chasing you? Do you pay? That it all comes down to all of that as well, doesn't it? Because there's a lot of businesses in competition, like whether it's a coffee shop or whether you're doing websites or whether you're in the medical field. There's a bunch of different, like you're trying to stand out. Everyone's trying to stand out in a fairly crowded field.
Exactly. And especially in that's why that practical space, it's so important to understand where you're positioned, because if you know where you sit on that scale, it's I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's a lot more simple to understand what you need to do and how you need to go about things. Because, you're going to set that expectation. So if people expect you to, pick up the phone 5 minutes after sending an email, you need to be able to do that every single time. The downfall that I do see a lot is people really deliver on that customer service because it's just them at the start of business, but they haven't really thought about that expectation that they're setting. And then as they grow, they haven't instilled what that is to their employees. That then gets diluted. That expectation and that service, if you will, that people were expecting, they're no longer getting it. So then that's where that distrust comes into it. And it's a lot harder to sort of get that back. Brands are about building that culture time and time. And then that's why that consistency is so important. If you want a brand that's going to speak for itself, that people are going to talk about without you having to say a word, that's going to come over time, but it needs to have that consistency and being delivering on that brand promise and that expectation each and every time as well.
And I would say, I know that there's a couple of businesses that are on listening this morning, and those that are sort of watching the recording will know, you may not have done this already. That doesn't matter. Each day you can start to build your brand from scratch. So what I would say is don't be daunted if you've been in business for 3 years and you've not done anything about brand, you have not really thought about this. Tomorrow is a new day. Today is a new day. You can get started today and start to build that. And it will take time to build. This is one of those things that's not an overnight success, but you can build a brand, but don't be daunted if you haven't started and you've already been trading for 6 months, 12 months, 5 years, 25 years. Tomorrow is a new day and you can start from there. All right.
Completely.
Any final words that you've got, Amanda, that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great point. Don't get overwhelmed with the branding process. Just take little bits at a time, really work to fill them and flesh them out, and then take on another one, because it's a long-term process. And ultimately just stay consistent. Anything that you implement, remain consistent on it, and then just build on it over time. That's the biggest piece of advice I could give. And be patient with it.
Fantastic. Also, all right. Well, listen, I'm going to leave it there. We will. I will jump into back to this just to talk very quickly about the series again. So, as I said, this is a series. This morning, we've been blessed with having Amanda Lowry talk about branding, and as such an expert, like it's really a great pleasure to have her in the city, and we're very lucky to have her on the webinar this morning. Next week, we've got Hayley Wilson talking about work-life fusion, which I'm really looking forward to. And then the following week, we have our first live meeting. Tickets went on sale. We are already half sold. I know that's usually we sell out in the last week, but this now with COVID, I think we're going to be selling out much, much faster. We have the Honourable Shannon Fensman, the Minister for Small Business herself, coming. And we may even have another special guest, but I'm not announcing that until we get confirmation. But it's going to be a big meeting. We're at Fitzy's at Waterford. Tickets are on sale now on the Logan Chamber of Commerce website. This is our committee, and we thank them for all the work that they do. We're all volunteers. None of us get paid for any of the work that we do. And the Chamber of Commerce has been running for now 42 years, supporting businesses in Logan. It's one of the longest running chambers in Australia. And now that we've got our own book, it's not going to like doing that, is it? No, there we go. We've got our own book. The book's available and will be available at the breakfast for $35. We can buy it online for $45. And lastly, before I wrap up, I do want to thank our sponsors. The sponsors allow us to continue to do the stuff for business that we do. So the Logan Office of Economic Development, Invest Logan, 101 FM. We've got a golf day coming up in September, and that's going to be at Meadowbrook Golf Club, and that's going to be a fantastic stuff. So look out on the website for that. Rebel 90.5 The Breeze, and of course our good friends down at IKEA. And yes, you can be a sponsor too. We are always looking for new sponsors, and you get a range of benefits and good stuff there. That's it for us. Have a fabulous week. I will be sending out an email about the JobKeeper extension. That should come to your email box very, very soon. But until next week, stay safe and have a fantastic week.